Our next discussion today features a person so impressive words will not do it justice. She is an Olympic silver medalist, NCAA champion, and world junior medalist. Her name between the lines is Hulk. However, that is merely the person on the field of competition. The person off the field, Raven Saunders, is so much more. She has faced her own mental health challenges. Much like in competition, she was able to overcome them. Now she shares her story to audiences far and wide in an effort to eliminate the stigma around mental health. Before we speak with her, we'll show a video clip courtesy of Gatorade that tells a piece of that story. When we come back, we'll have a chance to hear Raven in an intimate conversation with LZ Granderson. LZ is a journalist and former actor. He contributes to ABC News and the Los Angeles Times and hosts his own podcast, Life Out Loud. But first, the unstoppable Raven Saunders.
People have to understand your mind is a muscle.
First, I start easy money, easy money.
People always say, oh, you gotta have the heart, you gotta have the heart, you gotta have the heart. Yeah, you do.
Come on, if you don't, they will. If you don't, they will.
But it first starts with the mind.
Let's go, we gotta eat, we gotta eat, we gotta eat.
So what I tell people, if your mind is not in it, your heart gonna fail too.
Come on, easy money, easy money, easy money. Then we live.
No man now. Diamonds in my teeth, I got a lot of shine. Running up the number, that's a lot of crime. Try to take it from me, must be out your mind. Big time. Try to take it from me.
Reintroducing to many of you, Trayvon Bromell.
After a breakout season in 2015, Achilles injuries, 2 surgeries, it looked for a while like we had seen the end of this young man. He's come all the way back, and he's running right at his best.
I was always feeling like I was running from something. You know, if it was life, bad decisions that I made growing up, like I had a lot of anger hidden that people didn't know about because I really didn't express it a lot. Not having my father in my life, living in poverty, a lot of gang violence, living with like police brutality and things like that, like it's hard to think positive when there's so much wrong going around you.
Oh wow, I didn't even see that one.
Yeah, it's deep.
You know, you get to this point and it's like you kind of sometimes forget about the moments like this that help get you to where you are. 2015 indoor and outdoor were my first 2 ever national titles. Same year, freshman year, winning hungry, refused to be denied, and got it done, man. Crazy. And then I came back 2016, got second team All-American, didn't make the final, so I was second team, and really that propelled me to this title because having lost this really made me step back and question myself and remind myself of who I was. Through my career, or really just my life journey, I've been in so many spaces where it's like, it feels like a dead end, man. Like you're stuck, you're backed up, you're in the corner, and it's like, what do I do? Where do I go? And the second you sit there and you give up or you quit, like, man, you've wasted all of that energy, all of that time, all of that potential, you know, and I don't want to be wasted.
It was a lot that I was running from. I knew I had to make a change for myself. God is saying, you can continue to go down this road. You can hang out late night with the friends, rip and run the streets, do all this craziness and stuff like that, or you can make a difference. You can make a change. You can show people what change looks like. And that was the better route that I took.
One thing about me is if I want something in life, I'm going to get it. I don't care what's in my way. I don't care what obstacles. I don't care what it takes. I'm gonna get it done. I lost 80 pounds in 6 months. I'm gonna get it done.
for people like me, for people like Raven, for many others across the globe, athlete, non-athlete, it's all about what is inside. And I think sometimes it takes that igniter and that fire to let it burst out.
It's that fire, man. Like, people love to talk about the fire, but you can see it. And my fire, though, sometimes and at some points through, my depression, it may dwindle, but it never goes out. Never goes out. It's always there.
It took a very long time to really understand and know my purpose. It took many, many years. What am I supposed to be doing? And once you figure it out and once you feel that fire within, it's hard to extinguish that. I broke both knees, I broke my hip, I hurt my foot, fractured my forearm, I got scoliosis. Like, I have everything that could possibly be wrong with a person to keep them from doing these type of things.
All that rehab, all that road back, both mentally and physically, here now to Eugene. And blasts out of the blocks. Trayvon Bromell leaves Noah Lyles in his wake. And Trayvon Bromell barreling to the finish line and takes the win convincingly.
A lot of us just have a story to tell that we can feed off of. Like, Raven, her sorrows and my sorrows can connect with each other and we can make something great from it. The story behind it is the beauty of it.
When I step back at the world and I'm like, yo, I know for a fact that I can help these young girls, these young men, these young people, these older people, really see that there's more out there besides the challenges that they're going through, because I know through everything I've been through, if I can make it, there's so much that, other people can do. And when I see that fire in somebody else, it just lights another match inside of me.
I tell people, I said, man, track fun, running fast is fun, yes. Don't get me wrong, like, I love doing it, but that's not my purpose. Like, my purpose is to try to help change the spectrum of the world. So I think that's what I'm actually running towards now.
Thank you, Jim, for that fantastic introduction. And man, what an incredible video. So inspiring, so empowering. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like running across the middle. So thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm really excited to be partnering up again and contributing to anything that the Kennedy Forum is doing. Such a fantastic event. I had an opportunity to be involved back in February of 2020. And if that date sounds familiar, it should, because February 2020 was the last month that the world was quote unquote normal. As you know, in March of 2020, we had the quarantines and the shutdowns, and we had to all readjust our lives. And part of that readjustment for some of us had to do with the Olympics that were scheduled in Tokyo in 2020. And Raven, I just want to go right into it. First of all, thank you again for joining us. Thank you again for being willing to share your wisdom and your experiences with it. We're all so grateful for you. But going back to March of 2020, as I mentioned, February 2020, everything's normal. I'm freezing in Chicago. Other people are freezing elsewhere around the world. And then March comes, everything gets shut down.
Yes.
And while the Olympics hasn't officially been canceled yet in March of 2020, you are beginning to see sporting events get canceled.
Right.
What was going through your minds prior to the cancellations of Tokyo 2020?
Prior to the cancellations, I kind of figured as things were going on around the country, I was like, this isn't looking too good. And me personally, I'm a history nut. And, history tends to repeat itself. And I'm like, Ebola wasn't like this, swine flu wasn't like, I'm like, this is different. So I figured that things were going to start getting shut down as they did, including my own training facilities at that time.
How did you continue to train physically while you were waiting to hear what was happening with the Olympics? And how did you stay sharp mentally as you were hearing what was happening with all the sporting events around the world?
Well, originally it was easy. So originally they closed down the weight room. So we're like, okay, we have a place to lift outside. We'll just take some plates, go outside, do our workout, throw.
Then that.
And where were you? I'm sorry, where were you when this was happening?
So I was training out at the Olympic Training Center out in Chula Vista, California,
Okay.
at the time. So, our place was ran by the city. And it was the city who continuously was, shutting things down around town, and then the gym, and then our throwing facilities. And then we had to stop meeting in a dining hall. And from March until May, I actually wasn't able to train. I had to actually move in order to train. So I ended up relocating to Alabama to be able to have a gym. The first day I got here, I had a weight room, and I was hopping fences at a high school to go throw. And being mentally, for me, the previous year before had already been so challenging, battling injury, that this year, where it's just like, okay, all I have to do is stay in the house and train. Like, really? This is it? I'm like, this is heaven. But it definitely was challenging, especially during that period where I couldn't work out. I couldn't leave my house. Literally, I was staring at the same four walls day after day after day. And it was tough. But for me, I still knew that, all right, though I can't go to a park, cool, I can go to my patio. I can still at least, go for a walk if, there aren't a lot of people outside. So that was the thing that me and like one or two of my friends who I kind of was like quarantining with, what we do, we just go for, go on a hill and go for some runs, because we had to make do with what we had in that situation. And we didn't know when it was going to be over. And I feel like mentally, for a lot of us all around the world, that was the most challenging part, is not knowing when it would end.
And so when you finally got word that the Olympic Games were being canceled for 2020, how did you process that?
For me, it was bittersweet in a way. Like I said, I was recovering from injury, so I was like, okay, well, I'll get a little bit more time to train. Bitter on the sense of that was like my comeback year. I was injured the year before, so I hadn't made any money. So I was already in a hole. So this was like, my way of trying to get back on my feet. And now there's no way to make money. Jobs are shut down, so there's no place to work. So it's even worse than what it was. And, just thinking about all those things you work for, and now it's like, dang, 365 days, that's a long wait, or what it felt like at that time. It felt like an eternity after you'd already been working 4 years until that point.
Let's explore that moment a little bit more, because as I'm sure you were well aware of, everyday Americans, particularly during the quarantine, were struggling financially because, as you mentioned, jobs being shut down, businesses being shut down, not having a way to make money. That's very stressful on the everyday American. But for an athlete such as yourself, that had to be like a really strange place to be in, recognizing that you're supposedly, representing the country,
right,
and yet you're not quite sure where your next check is coming from. What kind of stress was that putting you under?
It was one of the most challenging things that I'd ever been in. I felt like when it came to touching kind of like every aspect of what kind of people went through in the pandemic, I saw it. For me, I'd never had a job in my life up until that point, until I was forced to, because I was fortunate enough in college to, be getting scholarship checks and then go pro, do pretty well, and then have enough support. But then when, got injured and then things happened and I had to get a job, so I worked. So I saw what it was like to work during a pandemic, and, how your company may go from giving you, these pandemic bonuses to not giving you this. And, you may still be working a minimum wage job that's still at high risk, and seeing your checks every month and it not being enough. And then also being an athlete and like, well, I need a massage. Well, I need a chiropractor, and all of these things on top of your basic everyday needs, such as food, such as toilet paper, such as clothing, such as making sure your lights are on, such as making sure your rent is paid so that you have a place to stay. I felt like I faced a lot of those harsh realities that so many people in this pandemic had to go through. And I felt like that gave me such a greater connection to so many different things and so many different people, because
I really understood and I saw like, you know, man, it was crazy. It was crazy.
I bet. Did it ever occur to you to quit?
No. For me, how I've started to see challenging situations, and this is how I've had to change my perspective on how I saw things. Because it's like I would always kind of look for bad things that happen, and I'm like, oh man, bad things happen. But now I realize that every time I go through something that's really bad or challenging, whenever I persevere and I push through it, something insane comes up on the other side. So I always know that as bad as it may seem, there's something even bigger on the other side of that obstacle. So when I'm in the midst of a challenge, it low key fuels me. Like when my back is against the wall and things are happening, or, you know, like when my mom passed away, you know, that kind of gave me extra strength because it's like, all right, this is something else that I have to push through. Because life is constantly going to be throwing wrenches and things at you all the time. But the beauty of life is seeing the flower you bloom into when you get through it all, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I love sharing with my mentees, and it's the same philosophy, so I don't know if I'm cheating or not by using the same philosophy over and over again, but I tell them you've already survived the worst day of your life.
Yes.
And when you, to your point, when you sort of look at the world through that lens of what you've already been through, it does sort of help, or it can help you push through to the other side of your current situation.
Right.
But I'm curious for you, where did this philosophy originate from? Was it when you were a child? Did someone, your mentor, share that sort of perspective with you? How did you arrive here from a perspective of, I've been through so much, I can keep going?
Me being able to come to this point has been a mixture of life experiences. In 2018, actually in January, I was close to committing suicide, and I was actually admitted into 2 mental health hospitals. And those forever changed my life when it came to learning different coping mechanisms and techniques and uh, healing, really. A lot of things from my past that, you know, we tend to suppress a lot of things or bury a lot of memories that may be very traumatic for us, that we're like, okay, that doesn't affect me. I forgot all about it. That when you actually sit and you work through those things, that there were things that I had been through that I completely forgot about until I had to sit and face them. And having to do those things and do internal, you know, cleaning and things like that kind of helped me to realize that, you know, if you look at life, you've gotten over so many things, and look at what you've gotten over. It's not a matter of all of this junk combining on top of you. It's the fact that you've gotten past every single one of those stages. And with that, and then the hip surgery, and then losing one of my closest friends, and something had to change, something had to give, and I went on like a spiritual journey to really kind of center myself, heal myself, mentally focus, zone in, zen out, and really get all of those things together. That, you know, I knew the techniques, I knew what I needed to do, but it was a matter of actually forcing myself to do them.
Let's back up a little bit, because that was a lot that you just shared with us. So I want to pull back and really kind of start with your upbringing and the world that you grew up in. Can you talk a little bit about where you are from, you know, your family situation, your friends, school, and then more importantly, how in the hell does a sister end up in the sporting event? We do track,
Yeah.
we do field, usually track, but you went field.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how, you know, you got there as well.
So I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. Great city, beautiful city. One of the original 13 colonies in America. So my roots are deep in this country. I have a mother, had a mother, and a sister growing up. So it was pretty much us three. Had some step parents who, from the video, who were drug abusers. Who, growing up, it made things kind of hard. You kind of grow up a little bit fast. You see things, and for me, I wanted to be a protector, and that's kind of what started my journey with sports, because sports gave me something that empowered me. It gave me a sense of purpose. As a kid, when you're trying to navigate and find your way in the world and things at home are crazy, it was an escape mentally. And finally, I got to high school, started lifting weights, got strong. My mother, she ended up, working nights and things like that. So I had to, at nights I would have to go home, make sure I was home from practice at a decent time to make sure my sister ate. So and she was in bed at a certain time. And
which sports did you play?
I did everything. I played basketball. I did track. I wrestled for 2 weeks. I won.
2 weeks.
Yeah. It was like 3 guys got hurt in the same week. And I'm like, track season is coming up. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not. I really feel like that was a sign for me to just stop. Just give it up. It's all right. It's all right. You're not meant,
All right. It's all right.
I did volleyball, junior year first season.
Wow.
Yeah, I was cold. I had 11 aces in one match. So, and then band, I was the mascot for a season, senior class president. I was very active.
Wow.
Yeah, looking back, it's crazy how much I actually did I did everything. But though it was fun though, and like I said, it was a way for me to be involved and be active. Get some attention. Get away from home, see my friends, things like that. Because my mom was strict, so there wasn't too much of you not going out, staying 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock out in the streets with your not gonna happen. It wasn't.
You had one of them.
Yeah, nah. My mom. I was only allowed to go with really 2 friends, all of high school, and one of them, he was 6'5". He played football, and he had a car, so she was like, "All right, some stuff happened. He can protect you." And then it was my little brother's house, so it wasn't really too many places. But I needed that, though. It kept me very disciplined.
So you go through high school.
Yes.
Right. You are clearly a superstar. And then what happens? What are your next steps after that?
So, senior year, I took off in track and field. And that's what really opened my mind up to the world. I made my first ever Team USA team. Was recruited by every school in the country pretty much. All the big names, but I ended up choosing a small school, SIU. D1 mid-major, but people looked at me crazy. But I knew that if I wanted to win a national championship my freshman year, that was the place that I needed to go, and I ended up getting 2.
Why did you know that?
Because the situation was the head coach. She was black. She was a shot putter, 4-time Olympian, 25-time national champion. And when it came to connections in USA track and field around the world, she was the person. And then her husband, he just looking at his stats, he just knew what he was doing. And then when I went onto the campus and it's 16 throwers, and I'm looking at Gwen Berry and a couple of these other girls that they have on the team, and I'm like, dang, I got to get my weight up. I'm looking at the guys throw. I'm like, oh, it really was a factory of throwers, man. It was yeah, man. So for me, it was this is what I need. I'm like, this is what, because it reminded me of where I came from in high school. I didn't have a ring. We didn't have a track. But at SIU, it was we had grungy stuff, D1 mid-major, it was snowed, iced, so we had to get it out the mud. And then every time that we went up against bigger schools, we walked in there and you could just feel it. It was We did not come to play in like bigger schools. I don't care if it was UCLA, South Carolina, USC. I don't care who it was. Like people knew that when the SIU throw squad came inside, like y'all better watch out because hey, we're taking at least half of these spots.
I'm listening to your upbringing and years up through college, and what I'm hearing, at least from a public perspective, is superstar, popular, confident, nothing can touch me. What was happening privately that you talked about you were sort of repressing in order to keep going?
Yeah.
Because clearly, publicly, it looked as if you were a huge success and that nothing was in your life was wrong.
Yes. Privately, I was battling a lot. So privately, even through what was that, high school, it wasn't until what was that sophomore year, where I actually went to Ole Miss. We took these little aptitude tests and things like that. Tells you X, Y, and Z, cool, whatever. So I ended up in therapy. And come to find out that going back, since like as long as I remember, I'd been dealing with depression. And there were certain periods where it was more prevalent than, where it would be a period. Like my whole entire sophomore year of high school, I was depressed. I had just won state the year before, but that whole year I was just going through the motions. My therapist helped me come to that conclusion. You were depressed that whole year. Then I thought about the year before when I was at SIU. There would be moments when I'd be walking around on campus like, I wonder what the world would be like if I wasn't here. Where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, and for me, I had gotten so accustomed to those types of thoughts that it's crazy to think that I remember being in those moments and those thoughts were so regular to me at that moment that I was like, okay, like this is just how my brain works. It's how my brain operates. It's how life is. Because I remember having those moments since as early as in 5th grade when I was forced out of the closet. By like classmates. So just kind of going back, once I actually got into, literally it wasn't until 2015 being at Ole Miss when I sat down with my therapist and being able to track back and go through things that I saw. But I was dealing with self-confidence issues. I wasn't in the best shape. I was good at my sport. So track and field was how I held my self-worth and value. You win a state title, bump what people talking about. You can talk all the mess you want about me. I'm a state champion. You get to college, cool. You break a record, you do this, that, and the third. You go out on the week, whatever. It was like, well, I have this, so I don't care what people say. But once track, if track didn't go well, which was very rare, or if I was out of season, where I didn't have necessarily, especially once you get to college where it becomes a business. You have places to be, you have things to do, and you have all of these requirements, especially when you're at a certain level that, people tend to forget that you're a person. And it's like, well, whatever you're dealing with, we don't care because you have this, that, and third, and we need you to do this, that, and third, and you can't say this, and you can't do this, and you can't go here, and I don't want you doing this, and everyone has their own opinions, and it's like, I just want to, can I get a nap? Like, can I get a sandwich? Like, I'm hungry. Can I get help paying this bill? Like, and it's like people tended to forget that I was a person that, for me, I kind of got to a point to where it was like, all right, whatever. And I started using my sport as a way to, maneuver my way, because initially I was never really like the whole like, all right, I'm gonna throw this whole sports thing around and, slide by. But shoot, when I realized that the system was just kind of using me, I really stopped caring. And then once I stopped caring, you start acting out. And then when you start, and it's like people see one thing that I realized too from my situation while looking at other student athletes is when student athletes are acting out, somebody needs to reach out to that athlete because 9 times out of 10 it's for a reason. And a lot of us, that's our cry for help. And I feel like by people not paying attention to those and if you listen to a lot of stories where it's like, well, we could have thrown these athletes away, but we actually stuck by them. Those are the ones that turn out well. And I feel like there are some athletes who just don't get that help that they need, or don't end up making that connection to that program or that staff, that get lost. And I was so thankful that I had that therapist, especially while I was at Ole Miss, because she completely saved my life, hands down. No questions asked about it. I still message her to this day from time to time, like thanking her, like, because these things right here wouldn't be able to happen if it was not for her responding to that message.
Wow. What an absolutely incredible journey, and really just a show of courage to not just deal with the issues in real time as a much younger person in school, but also just being willing to talk about it today with us, because shame is a really powerful weapon, as you know, and it prevents us from doing a lot of things we need to do to take care of ourselves,
Yes.
like sharing our experiences. So I'm really grateful that you felt comfortable enough and brave enough to do that with you. To do it with us. So thank you very much. Which obviously leads me to my next question, which is about the way that people view athletes as it pertains to mental health.
Yes.
Obviously Simone Biles,
Yes.
Naomi Osaka, Kevin Love, more and more athletes on a high level are talking about mental health, particularly from their own personal experiences.
Right.
Do you believe that the general public is getting the message? Because, I don't know from your perspective, but from my perspective, I look back and I hear the criticisms being directed towards a Simone Biles or Naomi Osaka. And so I'm not quite sure if what they're communicating is reaching all of the people that needs to understand what they're trying to say.
Yes, I feel as though it's working, because the sad part about it is I feel like those critics, for me, it hurts, because it's like the critics who are criticizing, what if they have someone in their life, be it their wife, their partner, their friend, or someone who may need that help reaching out, and these are the things that we're talking about that you need to be on the lookout for, but you're criticizing us as athletes because you don't want to listen to us, but you have someone in your life but that may actually need that help that you may not be there for. And I feel like that for me is the biggest thing when it comes to the critics. But I do see the change in the fact of the amount of conversations that I've had with friends or people that I've met on the street, or people who message me in my inbox saying that, hey, I've sought therapy, or I'm seeking therapy, or hey, I just started going to see a therapist. And these conversations 5 to 10 years ago weren't as common as we're having now. You didn't see as many athletes openly saying like, okay, I have mental health problems, because we've always been seen as these mental health warriors, or these mental warriors from a physical standpoint that, people don't understand. Yes, it takes great mental stamina, great mental stability to be able to do what we do at such a high level, but it's also so mentally draining also at the same time, that for us, if we lose that balance between life and sport, or, physical and mental, if that gets out of whack just a little bit, that's why you see athletes sometimes going AWOL and just doing some of the craziest things. And why I'm so thankful to Naomi and Simone and Kevin Love and Sha'Carri and Michael Phelps and all these other athletes who have actually taken the courage to speak up about their challenges. Because me personally, I remember how vulnerable I felt just tweeting my story, and the first couple interviews about explaining the whole entire process that I went through. And, we understand that people are going to criticize us, and, there's going to be backlash, and, we're being extremely vulnerable to the world, but we're willing to make that sacrifice if it helps save at least one person's life, because it's bigger than us, way bigger than us.
We know statistically that LGBTQ youth are significantly more, they're more likely to attempt suicide than their heterosexual or cisgender counterparts.
Yes.
and you identify as someone of the LGBTQ community. How much of your depression and the things you were battling do you attribute to being part of the community and being part of that statistic?
Yes. So I do identify as a lesbian, and I really feel like, especially a lot of my early childhood trauma stemmed from being a part of the community. My earliest memory, besides like the first happy one of telling my mom that like I like Raven Simone, like boyfriend girlfriend. I'm 8 at the time. That's my best way of explaining it. Was my stepdad at the time reading me the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and then going into the closet and never telling anyone up until I was exposed in the 5th grade. So I had a lot of self-identity issues growing up, and then getting to middle school and being re-outed. In middle school, oh my God, they have no remorse. It's terrible. And seeing those stories of young boys, young girls whose parents are doing things to them, or who have lost their lives sadly just because of the pressures and the things that these kids say, it breaks my heart so bad, just because thankfully, me personally, I was able to get through it. And certain things I didn't have to go through personally. Some of the stories of being kicked out at 13, or being beaten to a pulp, or having to go to these retreats where they try and pray the gay away. I'm fortunate, but it still breaks my heart, because I know that there's people that are a part of my community, too many people, who've dealt with this. And it's a big problem, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And that's why I speak up, and why I speak so proudly, and why my flag flies so high, because I know that me flying that flag empowers someone else to say, hey, I don't care. Like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be proud. It doesn't matter. And really just learning how to appreciate oneself for just being who you are at the end of the day. And that's really what I hope to inspire with the LGBTQIA youth, is just being happy and being free.
Do you believe that being Black also contributed to your frustrations or difficulties with being out? As many people like to say, it's harder being openly gay or lesbian when you're Black. I don't believe that, and I too am openly gay. I don't believe it's harder, but that certainly is one of the sort of beliefs that are out there. Where are you in this conversation of intersectionality?
I say yes. I feel like yes for me, because okay, so when I talk about intersectionality, being a Black gay female, okay, so being Black, we always talk about being Black first. So I went to like 4 or 5 protests last year. Then also being gay, and then you have that battle with some people in the Black community are also homophobic, and then having to go to battle with that, like, dang, these are 2 parts that are battling, but I'm trying to like help uplift both. And then being a female, and then there's women's rights issues and things like that, especially even today, that are going on. And it does get kind of crazy, and it does get hard. And me personally, I do see it, because maybe it's because I'm on social media, or me personally, I like to have those conversations when I meet certain people. So I just kind of like to pick people's brains. If you represent something that's different from me, I kind of want to see where your mind is at. So sometimes you see ignorance, and sometimes it's frustrating, but still having those conversations are the types of things that we need to be doing in order for someone to understand what it is like for someone like me, or someone like you, or someone who is cisgendered, or cis. We all have to communicate to be able to understand one another more.
How do you communicate with yourself when you feel like you're heading towards a dark place, or you find yourself in a dark place? What are some of your steps to help you navigate through that?
Well, first, I do a self check-in, where it's like I'll be alone, things I ask myself, are you good? Are you seriously good? Where's your mental? What do you need? So at that moment, if, depending upon, I've gotten really good about catching myself in the earlier stages, so I'm not too far gone. And it's hard for me to use my tools, but the first thing I do is I'll reach out to a friend. I call someone, sit on the phone, hey, I'm dealing with this. This is where my mind is at. But I also always, no matter what that conversation is, I always try to make the outcome at the end a positive one. So I never try to leave on, well, I'm down, I'm sad, and this is not going to change. I try to leave it on, I'm down, I'm sad, but I can't wait for this to get better. It's going to get better. I speak things into existence. Then I also have moments where I'll sit and I'll actually talk to myself, where I'll give myself that compassion. It's okay. You're going to be all right. You have this. I promise you, if you keep working, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, it's going to work. Don't worry. Because I feel like we all get caught up in this cycle of constantly being I'm my biggest critic, I'm my biggest critic, I'm my biggest critic. We all always are talking about being our biggest critic, but when do you comfort yourself? When do you console yourself? When do you give yourself that compassion? And I've learned that you have to have that balance in order to keep your mind at bay, because the world is going to beat up on you. If you let your mind wander, your mind is going to beat up on you. So you have to be very mindful. So for me, at least every 3 to 4 days, I like to see where I'm at mentally.
We have a couple minutes left, and this has been an absolutely fantastic and inspiring conversation. But I have to say, I was kind of expecting you to do this entire interview with your medal hanging around your neck. So I need to know, where is your silver medal? I mean, if you're going to bust it out like that and make histories, girl, then you need to let people know who you are and what this is all about. So where is your medal? Where do you keep it?
I keep my medal in my book bag, or usually in my car. Usually because I travel with it. It's one of those things. I talk about my medal being a medal of the people, and who my medal represented. So anytime that I'm out and about and I get a chance to meet people, or if someone recognizes me or they want to see it, I want someone to have that opportunity to actually lay their hands on an Olympic medal. So that's like another gift that I try to give out to the people.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Raven, thank you so much for your honesty, your courage, and really just being a fantastic, fantastic role model for everyday Americans, for the LGBTQIA youth, for Black Americans. I can't speak for women, but I'm assuming you do for them too.
Yeah, the whole community,
everybody. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.